it's Stephanie, and I am here to do the first installment of what I've read, where I'm going to be doing a basically mini wrap-up of the stuff I've read. I'll try and do it maybe every 10 books. This is books 1 through 9. The first book I read this year was Eleanor by Jason Gurley. I picked up this book because of the Pop Sugar Challenge, which was read a book where the title is a character's name, and this fit the bill. This is about a girl who had a twin, but when they were 5 years old, there was a terrible car accident and her twin sister died. And now that she is a teenager, she is experiencing a very strange phenomenon where sometimes she will walk through doorways and end up in different dimensions and be gone sometimes for days at a time. This had some things that I like, but there wasn't enough focus on them. This is gonna sound really morbid, but I think you have to remember that I'm kind of a morbid person. I really like books about families dealing with grief, and I didn't feel like there was enough of this in the book. This was the background for the story, but I felt like there was way more of an emphasis on this weird sci-fi fantasy twist. I would say it was like The Lovely Bones, but if The Lovely Bones had way too much of those like psychedelic heaven chapters. I just didn't feel like there was enough focus on what this death did to the family. Now, don't get me wrong, it was there. There was commentary about it, and that was basically like the background and the crux of the story, but there just wasn't a whole lot of emphasis and exploration of that within this family, which is what I like in these stories. So if this sounds interesting to you and you're a person who likes sci-fi and fantasy in your stories, you will probably enjoy it. I was looking on Goodreads, and everyone else that I know that has read this book has really enjoyed it. So far I'm the only one, and I know the only reason I didn't was because I don't like fantasy. So if you do, don't let that deter you from checking this out. The second book I read was I finally got to Jennifer Egan's A Visit from the Goon Squad. I have talked about many times how this book has that setup that I love, and I just do, and it worked for me here as well, which was a novel told in short stories. This is about the music industry, and all of the chapters / short stories are all interconnected. All of the characters, bounce around, and one of the short stories is from their perspective, and then they're a background character in the next short story, and it's just so interesting to connect all the dots at the end and see where they fit on certain timelines. And it was just absolutely fascinating. I loved how this was done. I really enjoyed this book. This was just such a me book. There's even a chapter that is told through a PowerPoint slides and like flow charts, and it was just absolutely great. I loved what she did with this, and I was really happy I read it. The next book I read was Stiff, The Curious Lives of Human Cadavers by Mary Roach, and the premise of this book is fascinating. Like, what happens to your body when you donate it to science? It's something I've wondered about, and she does a really great job of investigating. Some bodies are practice dummies for surgery, some bodies are used to find exact causes of plane crashes, some cadavers are used as crash test dummies, which my husband and I decided would be kind of boring, but Mary Roach said that one is probably like the most effective. Like, that one would probably give back the most because a lot of people die in car accidents, and she goes into it a lot in the book. So I definitely suggest this book. My only issue with it is the same issue that the ladies at the restricted section had, which was Mary Roach has this really corny sense of humor throughout, and she makes these weird jokes that just are not funny at all. And it really is like, I call it a substitute teacher sense of humor, like when you're really trying to like get people to like you and you just make really weird, uncomfortable jokes throughout. It didn't help my enjoyment of the book. I'm guessing they were there since it has the possibility of being like a dark subject to kind of bring levity, but it just didn't work for me. Not enough to make me hate it, but just enough to be like, please stop, Mary, just stop it. The next book I read I was really excited about. I was waiting for my copy at the library, and it finally came in. Yep. Lauren Graham's Talking as Fast as I Can from Gilmore Girls to Gilmore Girls and everything in between. I, of course, am a Gilmore Girls fan. I loved Parenthood, so I was really excited to read this, and of course I'm super nosy, so I wanted to know about her and Peter Krause because I also loved 6 Feet Under, and they were together in Parenthood. And this just really fulfilled everything that I want out of a celebrity memoir. And I agree with the statement that Rincey said that, you know, if you like the celebrity, you're probably going to enjoy the memoir. Like, it's very dependent on that. So I absolutely enjoyed this. I love hearing about her work on Parenthood and how fun it was and how excited she was to get the Call About Gilmore Girls, and it was just so great. Definitely enjoyed it. I'm still waiting on the audiobook version so I can just listen to her tell the story, but I've already read it. Still looking forward to me getting the audiobook version to experience this again. The next book I read was The Reader by Bernhard Schlink. This was translated by Carol Brown Janeway. And this was a book I had messaged Britta over at Britta Bowler to give me some books in preparation for my trip to Germany. And this was a book she told me to check out. And this was a great book, but let me tell you, the beginning is really uncomfortable. The beginning starts out with a teenage boy who is having an affair with an older woman. And yeah, it's divided into 3 parts. And let's just say the whole first part for me was just really awkward. But then it gets to the second part. In the second part, the boy is in college now, and he is a student, and he is attending a trial. And he realizes that the woman on trial was his ex-lover, and she's being tried for her crimes when she worked at a concentration camp. This book really makes you think about so many things, and so many things get called into question. And I think this just really explored, you know, German guilt about World War II and how the next generation was trying to deal with this. And it was just absolutely fascinating. And there's a few more twists in there. I didn't give anything about the plot away. There's just so much more stuff in this book. If you want to read something that is impactful and is just really going to make you think and ponder and consider things, I would check this out. This was, I think, at like 200 pages, so it's a really fast but very impactful read if you do want to check it out. The next book I read was also a work in translation. Michael, are you proud of me? And this was The Dinner by Herman Koch, translated by Sam Garrett, and this fit the Pop Sugar Challenge for reading a book that's going to be adapted into a movie in 2017. And this is a movie, I think, coming out in May with Richard Gere and Laura Linney. The premise of the story is that 2 couples are having dinner in a very nice restaurant, and the 2 men are brothers, so it's the 2 brothers and their wives, to discuss some things that their children have done. It was interesting because it's like this tense conversation, but they're at this really fancy restaurant. The other brother is a very high profile man in politics. And so people keep coming up and asking for autographs, and sommeliers are coming by, and waiters are constantly coming by and checking on them. And they're really trying to have this like deep, personal, private discussion. And all of that was really interesting. I ended up giving it like 3 stars. I would say if you were a fan of Gone Girl, if you like, you know, really unlikable, messed up protagonists, I would check this out. The next book I read was nonfiction. It was The Indifferent Stars Above, the harrowing saga of a Donner Party bride by Daniel James Brown. And this was absolutely heartbreaking. I didn't know a whole lot about the Donner Party. I mean, I know what everyone knows about the Donner Party. The author really goes and outlines, you know, the sets of poor decisions that really put them in the situation that they were in, and it was so terrible. But he really humanizes them by focusing it through the lens of one particular woman in the Donner Party and just everything her and her family went through. It was just horrifying. And I felt like when I was reading the book and things looked like they were about to get better and they didn't, and I was just so invested in these people, and it broke my heart so many times. And as a mother of a young child, like, I cannot believe the decisions that had to be made and the selflessness that people had in these situations. It was just heartbreaking. So if you are interested in reading nonfiction and you don't know a whole lot about the Donner Party, I would definitely suggest checking this out. Or if you're looking for nonfiction that you can be emotionally invested in any way, I would definitely suggest checking this out. It was fantastic. I absolutely loved it. I gave it 5 stars. The next book I read was Death at Breakfast by Beth Gutcheon. I read this because of the Pop Sugar Challenge to read a book set in a hotel, which I figured was going to be a mystery because I had a really hard time finding anything else. This was the start of a series, and it was a little too cozy for my taste. It's basically about these two women who are retired, who are staying at this hotel in Maine because a celebrity chef is giving these cooking lessons. There's a family of like high profile socialites that check into the hotel, and one of them is found dead, and it's about the investigation that goes on. And I just wasn't very impressed with. I had guessed who the culprit was, I guessed all the little twists in between, and it just really didn't blow me away. I have a thing for like old lady protagonists, so I really did like them and I found them cute and charming, but overall as a mystery it didn't work for me. And the last book I read was very different for me, but one of the Pop Sugar challenges was to read a book that is a bestseller in a genre that you normally don't reach for. So I decided that genre to be YA and to read Rainbow Rowell's Eleanor Park. I had read this because my issue that I've had with YA so far has been in that subgenre that is like that dystopian fantasy series thing. Like none of those have worked for me except for like The Hunger Games. But when I was young and I read YA, it was like this strand of YA, this contemporary, high school kind of romance, but still dealing with tough issues. I read a lot of Sarah Dessen, and I felt like it was comparable to this. I ended up actually really liking Eleanor Park, and if you don't know what it's about, it's basically about these two unlikely people who find romance because they have to sit together on a bus. I really enjoyed her writing. It was very readable. It had everything I remembered loving about reading YA when I was younger, just really getting invested in characters and really getting emotionally invested in relationships. I really loved how the author explored the condition that Eleanor was being raised in, and there was just so many different details that just broke my heart, and so many times where I just felt so terrible for her, but I thought it was a great story. I felt like she did a great job of capturing that cringeworthy intensity of high school romance that, I actually cringed while listening to this book because I thought about how my high school relationships were and just how intense you are and you think like this person is like the one. And nothing to say anything against this story, but just the things they were saying to each other and the thoughts that they were expressing about each other just hit nerves that I was like, oh my gosh, I used to say stuff like that. Ugh. Anyway guys, those have been books 1 through 9. Thank you so much for watching. What is something you've read so far in 2017 that you have loved? Again, thanks for watching. Hope to see you again soon. Bye.